Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's event right here in Worry-Free Production Studios. Tonight's fight features two amateur contestants, and there are zero rules because anything goes in the financial world. And now, let's meet our contestants. First up, weighing in at 800 pounds, record-setting from 11 Wall Street in New York City, here to risk it all in the market, the Investor. And his opponent, weighing in at a paltry 120 pounds, looking to secure his future and worry less about his retirement, the Saber. Fighters, ready or not, let's get started.
Can't wait to see how this turns out.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and four-time author, Tony Walker.
Ever been to a heavyweight boxing match? It's a sport that pits two opponents of like size and similar strength who, under closely guarded rules and conditions, gives each fighter an opportunity for a fair fight against a similar opponent. And while I've never attended a professional heavyweight boxing match in person, some 40 years ago, I did make the mistake of wasting a Friday night attending an outdoor boxing match, if you want to call it that, called the Tough Man Contest. Now, unlike the highly organized prize fights you see on TV featuring well-trained and experienced boxers climbing into the ring to duke it out, the Tough Man Contest's popularity and entertainment value relied on amateur and novice boxers voluntarily climbing into the ring against opponents who were sometimes twice their size. And as a result of this mismatch, the undersized, inexperienced, and overmatched boxers usually ended up like this guy, which is knocked out. So why would a novice, untrained, inexperienced person climb into a boxing ring to face an opponent twice their size? Well, probably the same reason inexperienced and overmatched savers willingly climb into the ring each and every day by handing over their life savings to an oversized financial world. They don't realize what they're getting into and might get hurt. So how do we at Tony Walker Financial help protect savers from getting their bell rung by investors? Well, let's find out. Well, welcome folks to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest. And to help us get a fighting chance against these investors out there, I've brought in another financial trainer to help us today. Right now, my favorite son-in-law is in the studio, fellow fiduciary, Mr. Trey Juergens. Good morning, Trey.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome on this beautiful March, 29th, 2022?
It is 29th, yep.
Whew, man, time is already flying. So, Trey, before we went on, I asked you real quickly, I said, hey, have you ever heard of Tough Man Contest? And you said, growing up, you knew if somebody was like a Tough Man champion, didn't you?
Yeah, a couple guys I played football with growing up, their dad was a Tough Man champion up in the Cincinnati area, so he was willing to pick a fight with almost anybody.
You know, and it is true. I went to a Tough Man Contest when they were popular in the 80s, and of all places I went to see it outdoors, you'll get a kick out of this. You've heard of Beach Bend Park in Bowling Green.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they converted the runway and put stands up there, and it was hilarious. I mean, what was so interesting, Trey, is the number of, some little guys. I mean, I remember a guy about 140 pounds soaking wet would climb in this ring, and you didn't know who they were going to face, and usually these big, huge guys would show up, and I'm like, man, this little guy's going to get killed. And I never will forget, there was a guy, I think he was a professional boxer. He got in there against a big guy. I don't think the big guy ever landed a punch. He pummeled that big guy over and over. He was so quick. Oh, and everybody loved it. It's like, oh gosh, this little guy's going to get drilled. It kind of reminds me of the story of David and Goliath.
Oh, yeah.
It's that same concept. The little guy gets in the ring. Nobody thinks they'll win because the big guy is so big and strong. And, of course, we know how that story ended up. But, folks, that's kind of the point today. I think many of you, and this is why I brought Trey in, because he's seeing so many of our clients as well. But many of you feel like probably that David out there, that little guy that is going up against the financial world, and you realize you're just getting pummeled by this investment world that exists out there. And Trey, I mean, we talk about this a lot. We always talk about working with savers. But I think that's probably one of the first keys where we ought to start out today's show, and why savers feel so dazed and confused and can't wait for the bell to ring to take a break, is that they're dealing in an investment world full of investors that don't really understand the mind of savers. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, you're exactly right. And I think as they approach one of the biggest financial decisions of their life, moving their retirement savings somewhere in this big financial world, all they're trying to do is not feel like the little guy. They want to get a little assistance, somebody in their corner.
That's a very good way to put it. And I think what you're seeing, Trey, because, and just to explain things, folks, Tony Walker Financial, we're a full-fledged retirement planning firm. We're all fiduciaries. I've been doing this for years. And one of the things we've learned over the years to be even more efficient and to see so many people, I need to probably find out from Connie and Shannon in our Bowling Green office how many new clients we took on last year, minimum 200.
Oh, easy.
Yeah. So people might say, well, Tony, how do you do that? How do you see so many people and help so many people? Well, first of all, we have a process, but then I have other fiduciaries in place like Trey. So when I'm meeting with people, and let's say somebody's ready to do business, I take them down to you, or if we're in Bowling Green, Heather, or whoever, to continue that onboarding process. So you're the one, Trey, fortunately or unfortunately, when somebody comes in and says, yeah, I want to move forward. I love the game plan. I love this idea of you all handling my 401k. What's the next step? Well, we'll go see Trey. So what we're going to do, folks, when we come back, I'm going to use the experience of Trey and what he's running into, and to prove a point that you are out here, if you're a saver, assuming you're one of those that's just concerned about the return of your money more so than on it, and you're looking for somebody you can trust, what's going on when you go out there and face these giants called the investors? You're going to find out why it's so difficult to work with them and why you need a local retirement specialist to help you navigate these tough waters ahead. I'm Tony Walker, along with fellow fiduciary Trey Juergens. We'll be right back.
Now remember, folks, when you roll over your 401k with us, you get a 15% bonus. How's that sound?
That sounds too good to be true.
Come on, don't you trust me?
What are your fees?
That is a great question, and we'll get to that after we roll over the 401k.
I think we need to get a second opinion.
Don't get stuck in the wrong annuity. Get a second opinion from TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. Tony Walker here, along with fellow fiduciary Trey Juergens. And in case you're just tuning in, we're talking about this idea of savers versus investors. And savers, unbeknownst to them, stepping into the ring in a world that they do not understand with a maybe possible advisor or this huge financial institution that sometimes appears not to care much about them. And what I did, and since we're using boxing terms here, you know what a sucker punch is. How would you define a sucker punch?
Just catching somebody off guard.
Yeah,
Low
but not
blow.
looking,
Yep.
not looking, whatever. Just and they say when you get sucker punched, you can get the daylights knocked out of you because you're not prepared for it.
Yeah.
So what I did, me and Derek are working on the television show. By the way, folks, if you're listening to the radio show, which I'm sure you are right now as we record this show on May 29th, 2022, Aaron's standing by producing, March 29th, 2022. Thank you, Trey. Roughly, so this will be on in May. So keep in mind, folks, that's another thing. That while we give the dates, you never know what's going to go on with the stock market and things. So that's why we give the recording of the show. But anyway, while we're recording the show, thinking about this, I wanted to come up with a way to kind of show people how they get sucker punched. I don't think you've seen these 5 sucker punches from the financial world.
I'm excited. I'll be caught off guard.
Yeah, don't get sucker punched here. I had to make a list here, but and you might add to this, Trey, but the 5 major things that I see savers get sucker punched by the big boys out there. Number 1 would be sucker punched by a stock market crash. Wouldn't you agree? Just out of the blue.
Absolutely.
So, folks, if you're a saver and you've got all of your money in the stock market, I met a gentleman yesterday, and he's nervous as a cat because he's had it in the stock market. He endured the pandemic. It came back. And, now we got wars and everything going on. This guy's getting ready to retire. He's like, Tony, I got almost all this money in my 401k in the stock market. And all I had to do was bring up 2008. I said, there's your sucker punch. It may or may not happen, but you can't afford to take that kind of loss. He said, I agree. So if you're retired or nearing retirement, you don't want to get sucker punched by another stock market crash. Number 2, and I love this one. You'll relate to this, Trey. Undisclosed fees and commissions.
Oh, that's a big one. We see that all the time.
And people get these mountains of statements, and I'm like, so what is your advisor charging? They're like, I have no idea. So we have to dig through them. Now, usually we can find them, but sometimes they're hard to find the fees.
Yeah, the biggest culprit, I think, there is the variable annuities. They can definitely sucker punch you with fees.
Another biggie, you'll love this one. Now, folks, by the way, before we give this one, we love annuities. We understand annuities. We've been dealing with these products for years, but annuities do come with penalties. And if you're not careful, there's a lot of annuity peddlers out there, Trey. We see this. They're just loading up everybody in annuities, sometimes putting 90 to 100% of their money in there. And these people don't realize that if they take a lot of that money out at one time, they're going to get sucker punched with a huge surrender penalty.
Oh, yeah.
Just had somebody come in yesterday. They didn't even realize their advisor had moved into a new annuity. So they said, yeah, we just moved into this new annuity a couple of years ago. And I said, well, that's all well and good, but now you're stuck in that annuity for another 8 years. And they said, well, why is that? I said, because it's a new annuity. They didn't know that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, another sucker punch, boy, this is a biggie. We talk about it all the time. That tax-infested tumor that's buried in your 401k when you go to take it out, and now all those taxes that hit you that you'd never thought about.
Yeah, all these people that have taken the risk to grow that 401k, and they're proud of that nest egg, but Uncle Sam owns a big chunk of that.
That's right. And then the final sucker punch, and this is where we're going to lead into your segment. I am going somewhere with this, Trey. Yeah, I told you to prepare for the segment. You're probably thinking, all right, Tony, when am I going to get to share what I prepared? But anyway, here you go. Long hold times. Whew. Now, I'm going to let you describe that. So I want you, Trey, to kind of take it from here. We're going to banter back and forth, but let's go back to that scene where I bring those people down. We're trying to roll over those 401k plans. And first of all, I don't know if it's a result of the pandemic, walk through the process of these phone calls with the client in the office and sometimes what can happen once you get on the line with these big institutions.
Yeah, so when you bring someone into my office ready to do business, that's what we call the onboarding. So we're onboarding new clients at Tony Walker Financial, but we have to call the custodian. That's a 401k company, whether it's their IRAs somewhere, we need to know a little bit more about the account. We'll have to call this institution, and in the midst of the pandemic, all this financial uncertainty, hold times were 1.5 to 2 hours. So you've got to kind of wait that out. You're sitting there with the saver, they're contemplating this huge financial decision, and the person that has their money, custody of their money, isn't answering our call.
My gosh. So have you been on the phone that long before? I don't know if you've ever told me that.
Yeah, we've had some folks that we'll be sitting there working on several other things. We'll have a client on hold. We'll be doing our day-to-day and waiting for somebody to answer and help us help the client.
Man. So some of the things, I know you came up with 3 things that you see that sometimes can be mistakes or people don't know about, or besides just trying to get in touch with these big institutions to roll their 401ks over. Go through the 3 things that you kind of see time and time again that can be problematic when we go to roll over these 401ks and dealing with these big institutions.
Right. Like this decision of rolling over a 401k is one of the most common we have. So in calling these institutions, they sometimes act like it's their money, not the saver. So they're a little bit in asset retention. They want to hang on to that money and allow
that's how they make money, right?
Exactly.
Which I understand it. That's capitalism.
They're all for you rolling that 401k over. They might want to keep it in an IRA with that same institution. So sometimes they'll pressure you there, but there's these 3 issues that we've seen that we really want to be in the ring helping out that saver against the investment world, because as they do this, the first one is the rule of 55. Some people are fortunate enough to be able to enter retirement way before that age 59 and a half, where you can roll over and take distributions penalty free out of a 401k.
Now let's slow down there a minute. So basically, folks, what Trey's talking about, if you retire prior to 59 and a half, and let's say you go yanking money out of that 401k, in most cases, there's an extra 10%. I call it an excise tax. It's just an extra tax they tack onto that. So now go back over that rule of 55 again.
Yeah, so I'll use a specific example. Say a gentleman came in, he had just turned 55, decided to retire. He was gung-ho on moving his money over to what plan we laid out for him, very detailed.
So he was going to go from the 401k to our split IRA.
Exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
So in doing this, he had a large project he wanted to pay off, his retirement gig. So his plan was to take a large distribution, roll some of his 401k over to our plan, and then go from there. However, we had this rule of 55, which is an IRS rule. So we had to explain to the custodian that the distribution he intended to take was actually going to avoid the 10% excise tax. He was 55. If you retire from an employer where you have an employer plan, an ERISA plan, which is a retirement plan, you can take a distribution directly from that plan, not
the 401k.
Correct, the 401k plan, not after you'd move it to an IRA. You've got to take it before.
As long as you're 55 when you terminate.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. At age 55 or a year after the age of 55 before 59 and a half. So we talked this custodian through this. They were not aware. They didn't have the paperwork. They were trying to push him through the web portal to roll over this large distribution.
Which we didn't want it rolled over just yet.
Exactly.
That's
so
wild,
after about 3 additional phone calls to get somebody who was familiar with this distribution, we were able to get the paperwork and the packet that we could help complete to make sure he avoided that, what would have been about $20,000, $30,000 in fees.
Golly, that's pretty impressive though, Trey, that you've gotten to that point where I know our offices, I know Lisa does a lot of these calls too in the Bowling Green office, but just how to navigate the phone call and what questions to ask when you get inside that portal, so to speak.
Yeah, and the portal's funny you mentioned, because a lot of these big institutions, because of long hold times, are pushing folks to the website to complete these rollover decisions.
That's scary.
So here's a saver who maybe worked on the line at a large automotive plant for his whole life, and now they're on a computer trying to make the largest financial decision without any guidance.
I don't mean to laugh.
I know it.
It's kind of like me at the Tough Camp Man contest watching some of these guys get pummeled. I'm like, what are you doing, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Another issue we run into is kind of the combo rollover.
Okay.
And this is an interesting one. Back in 2006, they implemented Roth 401k.
Yeah, okay.
So with a Roth 401k, it gives you the same tax-free opportunity of distributions from Roth in retirement, but it allows you to participate with your employer's plan.
So keep a note of what Trey's saying. Some of you out there have the opportunity. You can invest in a pre-tax portion of the 401k, but a portion of that money goes in the after-tax or Roth portion.
Correct.
Those are your contributions. Okay.
Correct. So some employers, not all employers, have this opportunity. And what we've seen a lot lately, and that's the reason we need statements when folks come in, if they bring us a 401k statement, we can dissect the fact that they have traditional 401k money, pre-tax money, and Roth 401k money, which allows us to know, hey, we need 2 different accounts for this rollover, a pre-tax IRA and then an after-tax Roth IRA. An issue that we've run into is the custodian cuts one check, they assume the other custodian can decipher the difference, and if all of a sudden some saver without help puts that big old check into their IRA, they've got a tax mess on their hands.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, but like I said, but not meaning to laugh, folks, but just the thought of some of you out here trying to go it alone and jump in the ring with these big investment type people. And then I think you had a third example you see a lot, Trey.
Yeah, the last one, this isn't super common, but it is if someone's fortunate enough to work past the age of 72. Remember, the RMD age used to be 70 and a half, now it's age 72. If someone works past 72, a lot of times there's a force out of a 401k plan. So if you're 72, this big time custodian, big financial world, they don't want to mess with RMDs, which we calculate for all of our clients as to not get those messed up. But they actually forced this woman out of her 401k plan by sending her a large taxable distribution, and she was just in the works of getting it rolled over to us in an IRA to avoid these. So by understanding that and on several phone calls and mailing the check back and going through the...
You've had to do that, mail the check back?
It's been a 3-week ordeal, and we need to get this fixed because that's going to avoid about a $10,000 to $12,000 tax fee.
Gosh. Well, that's the thing I'm most proud of, just with the staff, yourself, Shannon, Ross, Connie, everybody that's involved in these rollovers and getting this money over. And folks, that's the thing. We've done so much of this, and we're not trying to toot our own horn here, but if you're going to jump in the ring with the investment world, and you have the choice of a financial trainer that's been around about every kind of fight you can imagine. I don't know why in the world people wouldn't select to use us. And again, I know that sounds pretentious, but like I said, you got one shot to get this right. You're jumping into a ring. You have no clue what's going on. A lot of the people I think probably involved in these rollovers, I can't imagine them having any more experience than us. I'm not saying we're going to get it 100% right all the time, but we've got a lot of experience in doing this. So why don't you do this right now? If you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I really need to roll over my 401k. I've got a previous 401k. I'm getting ready to retire. I'm over the age of 59 and a half. I've retired at 55, and I want to understand this 55 rule. Why don't you do this right now? Why don't you log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Click on that Let's Get Started, and we have a brand new service. It's called the 10-minute free fiduciary phone call. We're at no cost or obligation. We will call you, either myself or one of our trained salaried fiduciaries, and we'll just talk through your situation to see how we might be of help to you. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or give us a call at 877-499-9255. That's 877-499-WALK. Well, we've got a few more minutes to share with you today, and I've got a really, really interesting exchange that took place yesterday. I think you were in this meeting. I'm not sure if it was you or Wes, but anyway, when we come back, we're going to dive into this even further and share an interesting conversation I had with a prospective couple yesterday, and why, in their view, the financial investment world out there really doesn't care about them more than they do their money. Good stuff coming your way. You're listening to The Worry-Free Retirement. I'm Tony Walker. I'll be right back.
Tony, I keep hearing the term fiduciary, and it's a relatively new term, at least to me. Can you explain what that is and why it's so important for folks to work with a fiduciary?
Well, actually, you're right. Fiduciary is a term you don't hear a lot. In the financial world, though, it's getting very, very popular because there are so many people giving financial advice now. So a fiduciary, by definition, simply means that someone is going to be working in your best interest, not theirs. The problem in the financial world, in order to transact business, to manage your money, for instance, you don't have to be a fiduciary by law. In other words, it's kind of odd, but you don't have to actually be held to a higher standard of working in someone's best interest. So we at Tony Walker Financial have volunteered, we have elected to become fiduciaries. We have the proper licensing. Besides myself, there are 3 other fiduciaries, and our job is to make sure that we are working in the client's best interest.
So give me an example of what a first meeting might look like. If I'm a new client, I come into your office and I meet with you or one of your associates.
Yeah, a good way to tell if you're working with a fiduciary is how quickly are they moving you through the process. So for instance, at Tony Walker Financial, that first meeting, Diane, when we sit down, we're basically going to go over all of your information. That's all we do at the first meeting. We're collecting data, we're making sure we understand what it is you want and what you're trying to achieve. Then in almost all cases, we have a second appointment. Now during the second appointment is where we provide all of our findings, all of our assessment, and that information is confidential to you and personalized to you. Now here's the real thing that really surprises people. We generally don't ask people to buy anything after that second meeting unless they're ready to move forward. We encourage them to take their information home, study it, make sure they understand how we're paid, how much money we're going to make on the transaction if they move money over, and just make sure they have a real comfort level. So yes, in conclusion, Diane, you want to make sure you're working with a fiduciary. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement, and I'm with my favorite son-in-law, Mr. Trey Juergens, fellow fiduciary here. Trey, you enjoying this show? It's kind of cool.
It's a good one.
Well, I think the reason I want to have you on is proving to be very valuable because you're so involved in having to contact all these institutions that the poor old saver has to jump in the ring with to get those 401ks or IRAs moved over. So you know firsthand how big of a battle it can be and how intimidating, maybe that's the word, intimidating it is. You know, again, we brought up earlier David and Goliath. You know, you remember that scene in the Bible in 1 Samuel where there's Goliath, and he's, you know, and that's an interesting scene because he is literally shouting out at this huge army, "Come get me," and everybody's scared to death because he's so big.
Yeah.
They estimate he was over 9 feet tall. And here comes this little shepherd boy going, "No, I'll take you on." He wasn't afraid of him. But anyway, so what I wanted to do in our time remaining, first of all, I want to share this article we've got up here, Trey. Now again, we're not going to mention who this is, but this is a large, handling trillions of dollars of 401k money. And what's funny about this article is how shocked they were that savers during the pandemic, remember back in the pandemic, savers, nobody really knew what was going on. I mean, those were scary times. The market's crashing, people out of work, they don't know what to do. They're shocked that a saver would ever assume that they're going to just take some money out of their 401k, which a lot of savers did. I mean, what is your take on this really when we sit back and the theme of our show in this investment world that can't believe anybody would take money from them to live on, basically?
Yeah, well, as you always say, the financial world lives on other people's money. It runs on OPM. So the fact that this institution is second-guessing a saver doing what they want to do with their own money just kind of speaks to the fact of how these big boys treat savers.
Yeah, it's and let's just take this one step further. And again, folks, we're not trying to diss the financial world. What we're saying is the financial world that we call the investment world, the investors of the world, the people that are into growth and analyzing things and taking all this risk. The problem is when you get in the ring with them, and the 401k is the best example, because when the 401k trade was first introduced in 1978, literally that's what happened. Employers started taking away pensions, and it forced these savers who knew nothing about the stock market to get in the ring and do battle with the investment world.
That's exactly right.
They're not wired that way. It's ludicrous. So anyway, so this couple was in yesterday, and it was either you or Wes. I had almost 20 appointments yesterday here in Louisville. But anyway, by the way, we're recording this show on March 29th, 2022, just for reference. But so I'm sitting there, and I wrote this down. I was scribbling the notes because I want to get it exactly right. Here was the exchange. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, now this is me talking, and I do this a lot. You've been in my meetings. I basically started off the meeting with, what brings you in today? All right? The couple, it happened to be the young lady at this point, said, I want to meet in person. So I was taking note of this. With someone, so in person was a key for her, someone local was a key, and I love this part, who will talk to us. Isn't that interesting? I'm thinking, well, doesn't everybody do that? Well, apparently not, because she's in to see me. Okay. Then the next question I had was, what's the problem? Okay. She says, I feel, this is the key, I feel that the big company handling our 401k doesn't care about us. Okay. And you know me, I love to ask questions. See, to me, questions lead to another question, and in order for an advisor to really try to help people, you've got to understand how to ask the right questions. So then I said, here's my next question. After asking what the problem is, the person saying she felt like the big financial company handling the 401k doesn't care about them, then I said, why do you say that? She responded, because every time we call, this is what, to your point, Trey, we're either put on hold for 30 minutes or longer, we either talk to a different person when we call back, or worse yet, this person said, they never even return our phone calls. To which I replied, another question. How does that make you feel? See, folks, before I give you the answer to that question, savers, I know the minds of savers well. I know what hurts their feelings. And I'll tell you what hurts a saver's feelings quicker than anything is if they think you don't care about them or their money. I mean, here's a saver's life savings. They don't want to risk it all. They've worked hard to accumulate it. They're going to trust you with it. Now, we're talking to the big boys or any financial advisor out there that's going to be like a Goliath and be intimidating and act like they're doing you a big favor. And they're going to turn it over to you. And if all of a sudden they figure out you don't care about them, they're going to have a problem. So here's how this person responded when I said, how does that make you feel? And she said flatly that we're just a little fish in a big pond.
Yep, hear that a lot.
Yep. So folks, if that's you might be sitting there saying, Tony, I mean, that sums it up. That's it. I feel like a little fish in a big pond. I'm tired of doing business and doing battle with these investors. I want to find a fellow fiduciary that's a saver, people that think like I do, care for my family, don't want to put all my money at risk. If that's you right now, why don't you do this? Why don't you log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Just click on that Let's Get Started. We'd be happy to set up a free fiduciary phone call. It takes 10 minutes. We'll find out quickly whether we can be of help. All you got to do, again, TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Click on that Let's Get Started. Or better yet, if you want to, just call 877-499-9255. That's 877-499-WALK. Well, we're out of time today. We really appreciate you joining us today, Trey. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so until next week, you remember, between now and then, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.